Good morning. The May 6, 2020 meeting of the Board of Estimates is now called to order. In the interest of promoting and maintaining health and safety as we continue to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic, the Board of Estimates continues to be streamed live virtually. Thank you all for joining us again today. Madam Comptroller, are there any corrections, additions, or deferrals on the agenda?
Yes. Please note that on pages 74 through 75, item 7, a protest has been received from Ms. Kim Trueheart. Please note that we're moving to the non-routine agenda. Item 2, pages 74 through 75, item 7, page 77, items 1 and 2, page 83, item 9, page 93, item 1, page 93, item 2. Please note the following abstentions for Honorable Young, Mayor Young. Page 12, item 1, pages 27 through 28, pages 29 through 41, pages 91 and 92. Please note the following abstention for the Honorable President Scott. Page 12, item 1, pages 29 through 41. Please note that there are no abstentions for the Comptroller. Please note that for Acting City Solicitor Dana Moore, page 43, item 1, pages 53 through 54, item 3. And please note the abstention for Acting Director of Public Works, Matt Garbark, page 12, items 2, 3, and 4. That's it, Mr. President.
Thank you, Madam Comptroller. I would direct the board members' attention to the memorandum from my office dated May 4, 2020, identifying matters to be considered as routine agenda items together with any corrections and additions that have been noted by the Comptroller. I will entertain a motion to approve all the items contained on the routine agenda.
Mr. President, I move approval of all of the items on the routine agenda.
I second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say nay. The motion carries. The routine agenda items have been adopted. The first item on the non-routine agenda can be found on page 2. The Department of Finance will present the proposed ordinance of estimates for fiscal year 2021 and an ordinance to levy and collect a tax and request authorization to advertise the ordinance of estimates. Mr. Director, and I don't know where that trial sound is coming from, but we're just going to have to push through it. Director Sinema.
Hi, good morning. This is Bob Senemy, Budget Director for the city. I'm also joined by Henry Raymond, Finance Director. And I'm here today to present the board with the fiscal 2021 ordinance of estimates and the proposed tax rate ordinance. So just in summary, the ordinance contains $3 billion of operating expenses among all funds. It also includes $823 million of capital expenses. So the total budget, operating plus capital, is $3.8 billion. The general fund budget only is $1.9 billion. It's actually a decrease of $34 million or a 1.8% reduction versus the fiscal 20 adopted budget. The proposed tax rate ordinance maintains our tax rate at $2.248 per $100 of assessed value for real property, and the personal property tax rate also remains the same at $5.62 per $100 of assessed value. If you recall, we came to the board on April 1st with a preliminary budget, and at that moment we had let folks know that there was a rewrite of the budget that was needed to reflect the post-pandemic reality. And so over the past month and a half, we've had a lot of work to do. First, to rewrite the revenue forecast to reflect what should be expected for next year in terms of revenue. We had to focus in on the key services that we wanted to preserve, and we had to make some tough budget reduction decisions. I just want to assure the board members and the public that as we went through this process, especially in the midst of this COVID-19 pandemic, our focus was on making sure we could deliver a realistic and smart budget that tries to minimize as best we can the impact on our residents. So the full detail of the budget will be posted online concurrently as this meeting ends today on our website. The next step in the process is for the ordinance to be introduced in the City Council in May, and then for follow-up hearings from the City Council over the course of May or June. And with that, I would ask the Honorable Board today to approve these two ordinances, and I'm happy to answer any other questions for board members about the budget.
Questions, Madam Comptroller? Do you have any questions for Director Sinema?
No, I was briefed yesterday and all my questions were answered.
Okay, Mr. Sinema, I do just for the general public. Can you talk about like how you guys will work through this budget to try to minimize impacts to citizen service as we go through this pandemic, and how you are crafting this budget, knowing that we're going through this issue, but also understanding that we have to still provide the critical services that we need?
Sure. So the approach we took over the last month and a half or so was when we realized the severity of the situation, we had to quickly come up with a realistic revenue forecast for next year. And the approach we took from there was first to focus on what were the things that we absolutely had to preserve, especially those critical core services that our citizens rely on. That's things like police patrol, EMS services, trash collection and recycling, and direct health services. So we first made sure that we preserved those services because those are things that our citizens rely on a daily basis. Next we had to decide if there was anything, are there any targeted investments that we wanted to continue to make progress on some of the city's priorities and the mayor's priorities. And so we did have some small investments in both public safety and in schools to continue the progress we're making on those two fronts. And then we had to go through reduction options. And again, our focus was on trying to squeeze every available option that we could come up with that had minimal impact on citizens before we affected agency operations. So that's in general the approach we took for this budget.
Thank you, Mr. Sinema. As always, thank you for your hard and diligent work for the citizens of Baltimore. Even with that, like, are there any highlights for the public that you want to list that once the thing hits the hands of the press is going to come? So I think it'll be best for you to highlight anything so significant changes that we're going to see and going to have to work through.
Sure. So on the highlight side, in terms of those investments, we're preserving youth funding across the board. So we felt that those services were very important. That's things like public schools, it's rec centers, aquatics, and youth works, and all those programs. We felt very strongly that we needed to hold those harmless. We also have set aside for city schools $30 million as a match to the school construction legislation that was passed in Annapolis this year. So that ensures that the city will be able to make our match to leverage those state dollars. On public safety, we had a small investment, $1.4 million we added to add two new what we call Baltimore Community Intelligence Centers in the police districts. We have two already, and we want to add two more, and we feel like that's a critical component of the city's crime fighting strategy. We also, across many other services, have some investments that were preserved. So we're continuing to make progress on the infrastructure and the water, wastewater, and utility funds. We're continuing to make progress on some of our community development framework that is being worked on by HCD, things like demolition and home ownership incentives and affordable housing. And we're also doing some investments internally on some projects we felt were important to continue. So that's things like the ERP project and some cybersecurity investments in IT. So those are the highlights, I would say, by section of the budget to give a sense of the things that we're preserving.
Read mine too.
And Mr. Sinema, what about any things that we are going to have to see some changes to significant?
Sure. So on the reduction side, as we mentioned earlier, we had to write down our forecast by $103 million. And so the way we approached that was we first revised any assumptions in our budget for things like inflation, debt service, anything that we could kind of squeeze to that would not have impact on our citizens. We also used unspent balances from other funding sources to preserve services in youth services and code enforcement services particularly. And we had to pause a lot of initiatives that were in the budget that we just cannot afford to do. So that's things like we wanted to add more of those community intelligence centers. We had wanted to add some routes for the circulator, and we wanted to provide more capital support, PAYGO capital support for much needed projects, but we just could not afford them. And then only after that did we look at impacts to agency operations. And so things like personnel savings, pay reduction savings is forecast. We have proposed some additional changes to employee health benefit programs, and then some trims to some of our key city agencies within fire, police, and DPW.
Mr. Seme, thank you. And thank you for your work as always. Are there any other questions from board members? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I move approval.
I second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Hi, Mr. President.
Yes, Madam Comptroller.
Yes, I'd like to make a comment. First, I'd like to thank the mayor and Mr. Sinema and the Department of Finance for all their hard work and effort that culminates the fiscal year 2021 budget. Today, the board approved the fiscal 2021 ordinance of estimates, which comprises, among other things, the city's operating and capital budget, along with the city's real and personal property tax rates. Developing this budget was particularly challenging task given the unprecedented decrease in revenue due to COVID-19 pandemic. With a revenue loss of $103 million in fiscal 2021, the mayor and his team had to make some extraordinarily tough decisions to reduce costs without cutting vital services and programs that directly benefit our citizens. Mayor Young's administration put forth a budget that will allow our agency heads and hardworking employees to continue providing services to our communities and spur growth and development in the areas of affordable housing, neighborhood revitalization, workforce development, and public education. Also, it provides funding for important public health initiatives at a time when healthcare is the #1 priority at all levels of government. This budget includes nearly $4.7 million for substance abuse, use disorder, and mental health treatment, almost $27 million for maternal and child health, and more than $21.4 million for school health services. It also commits resources to helping our most vulnerable citizens, with more than $20.8 million allocated to temporary housing and nearly $33 million for permanent housing for the homeless. It also allocates more than $58 million to the Department of Recreation and Parks for things like youth and adult sports, community rec centers, recreation for seniors, and urban forestry, among many other important programs. Most importantly, this budget follows through on the city's commitment to fully funding Baltimore City Public Schools with $287 million in general funds, $19 million in general obligation bonds for capital projects, and funds from other sources for a total of more than $400 million for public education for our city. I'm proud to support this investment in our children and our future. The money we are committing to public health, parks, and rec centers, support for the homeless, and public schools will help address the root causes of poverty and violence in our city. I know that they will be an area of focus for the City Council reviews and votes on this budget in the coming weeks. Last but certainly not least, I am glad to support $8.3 million in capital funding and more than $38.7 million in operating funding for the Office of Information and Technology. As we adapt to the new normal of life with COVID-19, robust and secure IT systems are more important than ever. The areas I've mentioned are just a few highlights of the ways this budget maintains vital services and improves the quality of life for the people of Baltimore. Again, thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, and let's continue to work on moving our city forward with the support of our City Council, our employees, and the people we serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Comptroller. The president abstains as this has to come before the city council, and I look forward to working with the mayor, his administration, Mr. Sinhay, to make sure that we get this budget as perfect as possible during this crisis, and we will work together as always to work for the citizens of Baltimore. So thank you all. The second item is approved. The second item on the non-routine agenda can be found on page 74 to 75. Item 9, Bureau of Procurement, Department of Transportation, mowing of the grass medians. We have received protests on this item. We will hear from the agency, Lorenz Lawn and Landscape Inc., and then from Ken Trueheart. So thank you. The response from the agency will be heard. So first, we would like to hear from Lorenz and Lawn Landscape. I believe. Yep. Good morning, sir.
Trial.
Hold on, you have to you're on mute, sir. You're not. We can't hear your sound.
Hello, can you hear me now?
No, not
Trial.
you, Director Sharkey. You guys are going last. We were actually going to the attorney for Lorenz, but we can't hear him.
Joseph is always also on the call.
Sir, we still
Trial.
can't hear
You
you.
gotta unmute yourself.
He's unmuted, Mr. Mayor, and for some reason we now know
Trial.
that his is the source of this trial sound that we have. So it may be that they are not allowing him to
Trial.
speak because of the version of WebEx that he has.
Joe Lorenz.
Yeah, but I know that Mr. Lorenz is also on the line.
Trial.
Mr. President, how about
Trial.
Mr. President, can they call in?
1 second, Mr. Mayor. We got IT on the line and trying to figure it out right now.
Trial.
Sir, so what you need to do is click the three dots at the
Trial.
bottom of your screen and click audio connection, and then you can call in.
Trial.
he types his phone number in?
Yeah, you type your phone number in and you can call in. Mr. Mayor and Madam
Trial.
Council, it's the version that he has, so we're gonna have to give him a workaround.
Trial.
I was wondering what that sound was. Trial.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out where it came from. Now we know who.
Say that again.
Did
Trial.
Sir, did you hear me? Have you found it? Give me a thumbs up if you found the three dots. And you click audio connection, thumbs up. And then you put
Trial.
your number in and put call me or call in. And it's still not working.
Trial.
You typed in your number, correct? And did you click call in or call me?
Trial. Trial.
Mr. Mayor, Madam Comptroller, we're still trying to get him connected in.
Trial.
Can we just have?
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Good morning. Good morning. There we go. The floor is yours, sir.
I thought I was expert at this. I've been doing it now for 2 weeks, but I guess okay.
That's all right. We got it now.
All right.
Good morning. The floor is yours.
Again, good morning to all. I represent Lorenz Landscaping. Joe Lorenz, the president, is on the phone. I guess I'm responding to the protest that Mr. Trueheart filed on Monday, it appears. Let me say first that to the extent the protest addresses employment, that 60% of the employees, both of my client and of its two minority and women subcontractors, are in fact city residents, which is I think is a remarkable accomplishment, and that's a percentage that's been consistent over the years. That translates to 55 full-time employees. I don't really see from Ms. Trueheart's protest that she raises any issues that are different or apart from what any particular citizen would raise, and ordinarily that doesn't give rise to a hearing on the protest in any event. But this is not a protest of an award of a contract. What has occurred, I believe, is that we've agreed with the city to extend the prior existing agreements through today, so that the board and the city would have an opportunity to consider whether or not it wanted to exercise its unilateral right to renew the contract. And we're here today because the city has elected to do that. My client is certainly willing to perform under the renewal period as it has under the base term of the agreement, without any changes other than what's been discussed between the parties. And so apart from that, I really have nothing to add.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. We will now hear from Ms. Trueheart. Ms. Trueheart.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Trueheart.
I have, as a citizen and as well as a promoter of positive youth development, been very concerned how the city is approaching very low-skilled work that the taxpayers pay for. And my request in this protest is chiefly around the fact that this work should remain in Baltimore City. There are numerous organizations, companies, both private and nonprofit, that are capable of performing this low-skilled work. The fact that this city has failed to engage the workforce sufficiently, and I appreciate what the attorney has just said, Mr. DeShiel, that his client has employed 60% of the city residents to do this work. But more importantly, I think that during this pandemic and during the economic woes that we're experiencing, the city ought to put forth a concerted effort to hire local, to employ the underemployed and unemployed residents of this city. And I think the city has failed to do that. And this is a prime example. This is only one example. And I think that if we're going to achieve a turnaround economically, if we're going to achieve a turnaround in the development of our own workforce, the city has to do some exceptional things. And I believe this contract is an example of such exceptional things that the city could embark on. And it disappoints me that our city has not taken heed to these kinds of opportunities. I suggested in my protest, and this is not the first time I've protested this kind of contract, I suggested that the city council do some modifications of our workforce development protocols, initiate opportunities for our citizens to benefit from the millions of dollars. And in this instance, we're talking $3.5 million, that our residents can benefit from these kinds of opportunities that don't require a significant amount of skills by the employees performing this work. I appreciate that Lawrence has been doing this faithfully for the city for years, but that does not address our basic fundamental workforce needs. And I believe it's time that the city step up and take a much more concerted approach to engaging our workforce. We have unprecedented unemployment. We have unprecedented underemployment. When does the city take on this task, which I think is a responsibility when you're spending tax dollars? And I'm concerned that even in January, when I filed a similar protest, the mayor wrote me a letter saying that his office would engage in a study of city contracts to determine whether there were opportunities to employ our young people. I've not heard a response back from that. I'm not saying that my pilot program is the way to pursue this issue, but I am saying that there are minority-owned businesses that could be the prime contractor who would, in my opinion, focus more on hiring, not just 60%, but I think we can achieve higher percentages. I'd like, in the interest of transparency, to hear back from the mayor about his study of this type of contract and what they found, and if they intend to pursue that concerted effort to engage our underemployed and unemployed residents to a greater extent.
Thank you. Thank you. And we in my office will make sure that my folks follow up with you about your legislative ideas as well. We will now hear from Councilman Leon Pinkett, who also wants to testify on this. Councilman?
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Madam Controller, and members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony as it relates to the protest on item number 7 under renewals. I'm going to keep my remarks brief, but I do want to speak to both the contract of $3.5 million for the mowing, as well as the 1.2 for tree planting and maintenance. These two items in particular were pulled in subsequent BOE meetings out of a concern for the quality of the work that was being performed by the contractor in question, an issue that's come before the council on multiple occasions. It appears that subsequent to those meetings that the mayor's office, working with DOT and Rec and Parks, is presently seeking to implement measures to raise the level of service on these contracts and to manage these and other similar contracts in a more appropriate and responsive fashion. While that is a good first step and one that is long overdue, the concerns surrounding this contract should not and cannot be purely relegated to whether clippings are picked up or curbs are edged, especially when we are evaluating a contractor that has approximately $40 million in city contracts and numerous others through the housing authority and school system. The focus should be on two major issues: one, oversight of the financial terms of the contract, and two, an evaluation of the service category in general. Contract B 50004841 was awarded April 12, 2017, and officially expired on April the 20th, 2020. The city has two one-year renewal options, one of which is being considered this morning. To date, Lorenz has been paid $7,680,840 on the original contract, with the most recent payment being received during, I guess, what would be considered the height of the grass cutting season, December the 12th, 2019. Based upon the current contract and expenditures, that amounts to an average burn rate of $2,560,280 per year. If Lorenz billed the city approximately $7.6 million from 2017 to 2020, why is the renewal covering 1 year now $3.5 million? That's a $1 million increase over the average spend rate, which is 40% higher than the current rate with no increase in service. My question is, does the Bureau of Procurement require or have a justification policy when increases are requested? Shouldn't a justification be warranted when any increase is requested for a contract that has already been awarded. Wouldn't this provide us a history about the work performance, especially if the scope of work is modified? In the case of contract B 5000-4509, which was initially awarded for the period between May 4th, 2016 through May 3rd, 2017, with 4 one-year renewal options, the renewal amount of $1.2 million is nearly 5 times the initial award. On March 15th, 2016, it was determined that no MBE, WBE goals would be set because the contract at $275,000 was too small to segment. Is that the same evaluation now that the contract is over $1 million? Does procurement have a process where waivers are reevaluated? For me, this becomes even more alarming when you add, and although it's not before the board today, a $26 million snow removal contract that has had 3 increases approved at $3 million a year to the same contractor on a contract that went from $5 million to $19 million over a 3-year period from 2016 to 2019, when we saw limited precipitation between 2017 to present. There are numerous city contracts that are unwieldy and don't allow the flexibility to be segmented into smaller parts. That is not the case with these contracts, especially the mowing of the median. This contract, which consists of 60 locations, should be unbundled so that it provides an opportunity for multiple contractors to bid and thereby offering the potential to grow our local MB WBEs. In addition, it is critical that we perform evaluations on local hiring. These contracts have to not only grow our local businesses, but they have to employ Baltimoreans. It makes no sense to solicit these services and not make certain that we have the highest percentage of Baltimoreans working in these positions. And to add to that, we should also put a premium on making certain that areas where the highest rate of unemployment and the greatest number of returning citizens are. Lastly, if we do none of this, then there's no reason that these services cannot be performed by DPW Solid Waste. This service is one that should supplement and not supplant what the city currently does. If we're willing to award this contract for this amount, there should not be one layoff in solid waste associated with budget cuts, because this is work that can save a city employee's job. In closing, city resources are precious. This was the case before COVID-19, but is much more the case now. When we disperse city funds, taxpayer dollars, through this body or any other agency of this city, it is critical that we achieve a win. And by that, I mean we get the services that we pay for. But that should be the least of our expectation. Our fiduciary responsibility and stewardship of limited resources should compel us to identify multiple wins. These contracts and the way that they are currently being dispersed and evaluated do not allow for us to experience those multiple wins. Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the time to provide testimony on these 2 items. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Sharkey.
Yeah, which thing, hold on. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. I guess I'll start with youth employment. So I just want to mention that I set up at DGS, I set up partnerships for youth employment with both high schools, ROCA, and Job Corps. And all of those were important and quality services that both met the needs of local employment and also met the needs of the city. And those things each took 2 to 3 years of hard work to make those things happen. I'm very much a supporter of these types of programs, but they also have to work for the city. So I've also already started DOT working with ROCA and would certainly love to consider other types of job training programs into the future, but it takes more than 1 year to come up with one of these types of programs. So I just want to start by talking about how difficult it is to make that a program that both works for the city, but also is something that works for the needs of the local nonprofits. And I've had a long history of also working with Living Classrooms, other groups as well. So I certainly think that these are all good ideas, but have to be done in an appropriate fashion that actually works for the city. In terms of the MBE, WBE, there are, over, I think Mr. Lorenz or Mr. Where is he? He's not on my picture anymore. Said that youth employment, MBE, WBE was 27 and 9%. So a large percentage of MBE, WBE employees and employed, with over 60% of employees being city employees. These things are certainly contracts that need to be reviewed, but the work does happen on a frequent basis, and it's very difficult to get a city contract through within less than a 1-year time period. And I know nobody wants to hear that. That is the absolute truth in my last 15 years working for the city. Discussing performance. So last year when I came in, which was July, starting in August, we came up with median stat, which focused both on 3 types of median groups. So there's 3 groups in the city that do medians. There's Lorenz, there's in-house crews, as well as larger contracts that we have for new builds. So if we do a new bridge or a new streetscape project, those companies are then for 2 years supposed to maintain medians. So we started median stat last year, and the results were positive and definitely into the right direction in terms of the work done. The amount of trash being picked up, cleaned. We had an inspector following Lorenz each day, looking over photos and meeting bi-weekly with Lorenz last year, which also showed a lot of weaknesses in our in-house work as well. So there's certain portions of the medians that we should be doing, as well as certain medians that we were not giving our part of the contract. So we were supposed to be doing trees and bushes. We were not doing that appropriately either. So we're moving towards doing that as well. Better, not only better performance from Lorenz by the end of last year, but also improved city performance and teamwork on those, and also on the larger contracts as well. And let's see. And I just want to mention to Mr. Councilman Pinkett's point, the 3.5 million is an up to spend. So each cut gets a certain amount of money, and it'll be, the spending is up to a particular amount. So it's a blanket contract, so it's as you spend through the year. So it's not necessarily 3.5 million, it's each PO comes through each time. So it's, the amount of money spent isn't always the same. It's just an up to set limit. Okay, I think that's mainly it. If anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Director. And as you know, I reached out to you over the weekend about this very issue because the conditions of medians across the city are just unacceptable. So for me, most importantly, as we work through, and you know that I will work with you guys and anyone trying to figure out how we can have a more direct impact on more citizens in Baltimore, returning citizens and young people, but also as we go through this crisis and know that people are seeing things in a different light. Also, how fast are we going to see the medians actually be cut? As you know, I actually went out and started cutting medians myself because we simply were not having them cut. So when can we citizens expect to see medians be cut again in Baltimore, because they are looking in a way that they should never look?
Terrible.
So just yesterday, I also went out and cleaned medians with my crews. So we brought our crews back on Monday with appropriate PPE and social distancing. So we have about 38 crew members now back in-house doing medians. I don't believe that this is enough people to do the task, of course, in a quick manner. And that's why we need contract supplemental help, because these are folks that are usually doing other types of landscaping work, but they are now focusing on medians. I went out with them yesterday. Hopefully they are working hard, but they're going to need more help with the task for sure. So we wanted to make sure that we brought back people in an appropriate fashion and with a safe fashion for our employees. And I believe we've done so. Each has a mask, and we're instructing them on social distancing. We have the crews ready. They're going, and then we'll also need further with the further assistance with the median contract for mowing. So I can't give a particular date, but we're, if this contract passes the board today, we will certainly be able to give you a better concept of how long it will take to get the first good cut of medians.
So to that point, Mr. Director, so just for the sake of assumption, assume that the contract is approved today, what kind of impact will that have on your ability to cut medians?
Probably triple the speed of the first cut.
So how fast, right now, how long is it taking?
I think it's going to take probably 5 weeks to get the first cut in with that. And then after that would be probably 3 weeks with the in-house crews.
So you think that you could do that 3 times as faster with this contract?
Correct.
Okay. And then also, Mr. Director, is there opportunity as you go through this and you go through this emergency for you to try to work with organizations and companies to do the very thing that people are saying about trying to employ more individuals from the city, young people, returning citizens, because we know that there's a lot of work and things that need to be done?
Yeah, so like I said before, at DGS, I set up 3 partnerships that employed city residents and was both beneficial to the city and beneficial to those people. So it was giving them actual pathways to careers. Like I said, that also took 2 to 3 years for each of those programs, which I'm very proud of. We've already set up ROCA working with DOT. ROCA pulled their crews themselves back in March. We're in talks with them again to consider bringing ROCA back. I'm a very big fan personally of ROCA. I really like the quality of the service that they provide, and I want to see about bringing them back more. And I was also interviewing folks to bring back a couple more people to start taking some of these, to experiment with in-house mowing of more services with seasonal maintenance aides through local programs to hire in-house people on short-term contracts for ROCA, UMBC's Choice Program, which has some Cherry Hill connections, as well as interviewed 2 of Miss Trueheart's folks, but they went somewhere else. I don't know where they ended up going. So we've interviewed other folks. I am interested in that. I am personally dedicated towards doing those types of programs. So of course, as always, but it takes time to really develop them and do them in a way that both gets the job done and improves the lives of those employees.
Mr. Mayor, Madam Comptroller.
Thank you. Can you hear me, Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
All right. To the councilman's point, I'm looking at every contract because when I was president, I had problems with the way I saw the medians looking in the city of Baltimore, and I do care about trimmings that's not cleaned up because it ends up in our harbor. I'm looking at every contract for even duplicity to see if we really need some of these contracts. So as mayor, I'm looking at everything because I want to see where we can maximize savings. Where at one time on the council, we talked about creating a mowing division, and that went nowhere. I'm looking at that as well. Not to say that outside contractors can't come and supplement us, but when they come and do the work, they must do the work just like they would do it at their own property. I mean, we got to make sure that these companies take pride in getting these contracts and providing the work and the services that we deserve as a city of Baltimore. No longer as mayor of this city, as long as I'm sitting in this seat, as I'm going for mediocrity. It's not going to happen. The taxpayers deserve good services when we're spending taxpayers' dollars. So I just want to let you know that I pulled the contract because I was unhappy as council president with what I was seeing riding throughout the city, looking at our medians, because I thought it could have been done better than what it was being done. So I am looking at contracts. I have my minority office looking at the MBEs and WBEs, and I'm scrutinizing everything because that's what we're supposed to do. So I just want to let you know, I'm not setting on my laws. I'm looking at everything, all the contracts, all the work-related things that making sure that our citizens are actually getting employed on these contracts as well. So I just want to let you know that I'm looking at it, and that's why that contract was.
Thank you. Madam Comptroller.
Yes, we all know that the medians look very bad, and with all the rain that we have, they're overgrown, and the longer we wait, the harder it is to cut. But based on the information that I've heard from Councilman Pinkett, I'm going to abstain on this.
All right, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. President, this is Kim Trueheart.
Ms. Kim,
I
we don't do back and forth on the BOE, Miss Kim. So any comments that you have at this point will have to be, we've heard your protest, but you can direct to me directly in a conversation. I will entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I move that the protest be denied and that we move to approval of the contract. And I just want to give you a little context as to why I'm making the motion and would encourage everyone to agree with the motion. The law department looked at the history of Lorenz, specifically looking for any documentation of complaints about the performance. And we looked, but we did not find anything documented, which caused us to then move to look at how this contract could be brought back, if it should be brought back. And one of the things that we decided was that the contract should be brought back because there clearly is a need for this work, but also the contracts as written provide for termination for cause. In other words, if performance is not up to snuff, it's not what any of you, President Scott, Mayor Young, Madam Comptroller, feel should be happening with respect to this contract, we can also terminate the contract for convenience. So it makes sense, given the great need, that we bring it back, that we move to approval, but also keep a close eye. The protests that have been raised really speak to sort of general needs that the city has. I think under the COVID pandemic, all of our impressions and understandings of what constitutes an essential employee is changed. And the silver lining in all of this is it creates an opportunity for us to look at, how we do business day to day. So with that, I feel that the protests are obviously, they were timely, they were well presented. They do raise concerns that the city should consider generally. They don't go to the real reasons why we would deny a contract, which is really poor performance or cost. So with that, I do move for denial of the protests and ask that this board approve the contracts for Lorenz.
I second.
All right. All those in favor of approving this, say aye.
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 We know all opposed say nay. We know the comptroller abstains. This item has been approved. The third item on the non-routine agenda can be found on page 77. Recommendations for contract awards, resurfacing highways at various locations. We have received a protest on this item. We will hear ENR Services, Inc., and then from Manuel Luis Construction Company. The response from the agency will be heard after them. So thank you. First, we will hear from Mr. Hugo Flores, representing ENR Services.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, sir, but there's a lot of background noise. A lot. So if you can get somewhere that's a little more quiet, that'll be greatly appreciated.
Okay, I was shuffling some paper around. We submitted this bid for contract TR 20010 resurfacing highways on December 18th, as outlined on the bid documents. It just so happened that day there were 4 bids due same time, and led to this one missing a notary signature on one page, which was page 321. The bid was not materially defective. Basically, it was just that one signature, and basically the difference between us and the next bidder is $218,730, which is a significant difference. The bid, the prices, quantities, everything was considered, so everything is correct. At this point, it was just one notary signature for one page that was missed. That is basically, going to cost the city over $200,000. That could be saved if we were allowed to have that page cured and signed afterwards or waived.
Thank you. We will now hear from, I believe, sir, are you still there? We'll hear from, yeah, we're going to unmute you. Mr. Daniel, there you are. Let's see if we're still good. Oh, you're good to go. Go ahead,
Okay.
sir.
All right. If there's one principle that is cardinal, that's core to the whole concept of competitive bidding, and that is that you don't get two bites at the apple. You don't get to submit an optional bid. The page that was just referred to is the bid affidavit itself. Without that affidavit, if it's not been completed in the manner that the city requires, in effect, there's no bid at all. You can't submit something and then leave yourself, reserve to yourself the opportunity to say, well, I want the contract or I don't want the contract, depending upon what the circumstances may be as of the time the board or the city may consider it. This is a legal issue, but it's critical to the whole, as I say, to the whole concept of competitive bidding. The bid affidavit itself was not executed in the manner that the document required. I can appreciate the fact that things are done hurriedly and mistakes are made, but this is not a minor error. This is not a minor irregularity. This goes to the very heart of the matter, and we can't abandon the principle that you just don't get two bites at the apple. That's all I have.
We will now hear from the agency. Ms. Griffin will be providing remarks on behalf of the Department of Transportation.
Good morning, Letitia Griffin, Deputy of Administration for the Department of Transportation. The department stands by its recommendation to award this contract to the second bidder. The minority, the MWBE package was submitted to MBU. And in fact, page 321 is the MWBE affidavit. According to MBU, that submission was found non-compliant, so we moved on to the second bidder, which was M. Louise, and based our recommendation on them being compliant with all of their documentation submitted for bid TR 210, surfacing various locations.
Questions from board members? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I move that the protest be denied and that the contract be awarded to M. Louise Construction. And I want to give you some context. I agree with Attorney DeShields that without that affidavit signed, it is as though no bid had been submitted. It's a cardinal rule in the law that if an affidavit is required and it's required to be signed and notarized, that must be done. It wasn't done here. And I understand mistakes do happen, and rush often results in mistakes happening, and that's regrettable. But that left the city with really no choice but to reject that bid. So for that reason, again, I move that the protest be denied and that the contract be awarded to M. Louise Construction as recommended.
I second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carries. This item has been approved. The fourth item on the non-routine agenda can be found on page 83. Item 9, recommendations for contract awards, police headquarters and annex elevator and modernization. We have received 2 protests on this item. We will hear from Nichols Contracting first, followed by Mr. Copeland on behalf of Schlosser Inc., and then Mrs. Letke of Letke Security Contract. Response will be heard after. Mr. Nichols, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. This is Tyler Nichols with Nichols Contracting. I was contacted yesterday by Department of General Services to let us know that somebody was protesting our bid. As far as I've been made aware, because I did not receive the protest, they are protesting our participation. As you can see on the agenda, the MBU office has approved our participation on this project. So that's all I have, just because I do not know what they're protesting on.
All right, the protest was actually sent to you, but we will take that. Now we will go to Mr. Cohen. Mr. Cohen, you have to unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. Can everyone hear and see me now?
You can, thank you.
Okay, good morning. My heart goes out to everyone who's being touched by this pandemic. This bid protest is pretty straightforward. The contract required a 3% WBE participation. And the contract and the Baltimore City Code say that only 25% of that goal can be met through the use of non-manufacturer suppliers. Nichols listed Absolute Solutions, who is a non-manufacturer supplier, for 100% of its WBE participation. They even listed Absolute Solutions as providing construction supplies. So they cannot use Absolute to meet the entire 3% WBE participation. Therefore, their bid is non-responsive and should be dismissed. Now, Schlosser was the third low bidder on this project. And the second low bidder committed the same mistake that Nichols did. The second low bidder was Chilmar. Chilmar listed Tegeler Construction to furnish electrical equipment and mechanical equipment for the project to meet the entire 3% WBE participation on the project. Again, this supplier, as a non-manufacturer supplier, cannot meet the entire 3% WBE participation goals. So both of these bids are non-responsive. They don't meet the WBE participation requirements, and they should be rejected. There's another issue that has been raised about Schlosser's bid, which goes to its participation on the project for WBE contractors. Schlosser listed two subcontractors, Letke Security and Design Plus Sprinkler Systems. Unlike the WBE contractors listed by the other two bidders, Letke and Design Plus will do actual construction work on the project, totaling 3% and satisfying the WBE participation requirements. However, there was a change to WBE's participation form, where Schlosser made a change at the last minute, which Ms. Letke approved over the phone. Ms. Letke filed a protest and a letter demonstrating her acquiescence in that change, and we don't believe that should affect Schlosser's entitlement to award of the contract. So that's our position, that the first two bidders did not meet the WBE participation requirements in the contract. They quite clearly didn't meet those. Schlosser then submitted the low responsive bid on the project and should be given the award. In the alternative, we would ask that all bids be rejected and the project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We now will go to Ms. Letke. Ms. Letke, we know that you're on the phone. Ms. Letke, you can start speaking now. Hello? Ms. Letke, are you there? Ms. Letke, are you there? All right, Ms. Letke, it seems not to be.
Mr. President, speak on behalf of Ms. Letke.
No, you cannot, sir. Sorry.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Director Nash from DGS. Madam Director.
Good morning, Mr. President. In listening to the grounds of the protest from Mr. Cohen, I believe I need to defer to the EMBU office, to Ms. Tamara Brown, to respond on the grounds of the EMBU, on the MBE and WBE validity of the subcontractors' information that was submitted.
All right, Ms. Brown in the line. The floor is yours.
Good morning, Tamara Brown, Minority and Women's Business Opportunity Office. Can you all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, to address the matter of there not being a WBE, it's 25% that they're trying to credit for the WBE on the lowest responsive bidder. Article 5, Subtitle 28 states that a bidder may count 100% of its expenditures to a certified business enterprise supplier who is a wholesaler warehousing the goods or a manufacturer's representative. In the case of Absolute Supply and Services, LLC, they have a 3,200 square foot warehouse with 3 trucks and the inventory of multiple supplies, equipment, parts. Absolute Services has established 30 accounts with some manufacturers to include Dakin, Vitalik, Zurin Industries, York International, and Goodman Manufacturing. They buy directly from manufacturers. They are a manufacturer's representative for a long list of manufacturers, and therefore they qualify as a supplier manufacturer, which is why they receive 100% for participation as a WBE on this contract.
Thank you. So, Ms. Brown, this totally satisfies the MBOO office for compliance?
Yes, we found the bidder compliant based on conditions in Article 5, Subtitle 20.
May I respond?
No, sir, you cannot.
It's simply a
No.
Any other questions from the board?
Yes, I have a couple questions. When this solicitation went out, it included a base bid as well as an alternative number 1 for additional work. Could you explain what the additional work would consist of?
Yes, Madam Comptroller. Assuming that question was directed at me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. So the building complex, the Baltimore City Police headquarters and annex are actually 2 separate but connected buildings. The base part of the award of the project would be for the full replacement of 7 elevators in the main headquarters building. And then the second half that was bid out as alternate would be for similar work, but in the annex portion of the building for 3 elevators. So a total of 10, 7 in one, 3 in the other. Knowing that there could be issues that come up with cost overruns or any sort of complications once the first part of the project has begun, we kept them separate, knowing that there's only a finite amount of funds available and didn't want to fully commit to replacing all 10 at the same time within the same project. Additionally, the condition of the 7 elevators in the headquarters building are they're in worse condition and in more dire need of replacement and attention, and so that's why they're the first ones that we're going to be paying attention to.
So when we take a look at repairing the others, will it be put out for bid or will it be an extra work order with the vendor that's approved today?
No, ma'am. It'll be put back out for public bid.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from any other board members? All right, seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
2 motions. The first is to reject the protest of Ledke for failure to appear. And if I could get a second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion carries. Madam Solicitor.
All right, and the second, pardon me, the second motion is to also reject the protest of Schlosser and to proceed to award the contract to Nichols Contracting. The reason is that I believe that it's well established through Ms. Brown and Ms. Nygash Nash that they did do a very thorough investigation of all of the respondents on this proposal, that they established that the MBE, WBE requirements were met. And so therefore, the protest should be rejected and proceed to award.
I second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say nay. The motion carries. This item has been approved. The 5th and final item on the non-routine agenda can be found on page 93 Department of Audits audit report. Auditor Pash, the floor is yours.
Good morning. I'm going to share a presentation. Good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, Mr. Auditor, hold on 1 second. There's some feedback. So it sounds like somebody has multiple computers up. You have to mute the sound on one of them, please. Try now, sir.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Madam Comptroller, and board members. My name is Josh Pash. I'm the City Auditor. I am here to present the CAFR and the single audit for the fiscal year ended 2019. There are three reports that are being presented. One is the comprehensive annual financial report. One is the single audit, which is the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. And there is a report on internal controls, which covers both of those audits. For these audits, I would like to thank the audit teams and the city personnel who put a lot of effort into these audits. The Baltimore City Department of Audits and SB Company LLC jointly performed the audits of the financial statements and the single audit. The CAFR is due at the end of the calendar year, and that report was issued on December 27th, 2019. The single audit is due at the end of March. There was an extension issued, but we were able to complete it within the normal time frame, and that was issued dated March 17th, 2020. The report on internal controls over financial reporting was dated December 27th, 2019. All these will be posted to the Comptroller and Audits website once they are approved by the board. What I would like to do is I would like to go over the significant findings and noted in the reports. And the findings are classified as either a deficiency of internal control, which indicates that the design or operation of a control does not allow management or employees in the normal course of performing their assigned functions to prevent or detect and correct misstatements on a timely basis. A significant deficiency is a combination of deficiencies in internal control that is less severe than a material weakness, but important enough to merit attention by those charged with governance. A material weakness is a deficiency or a combination of deficiencies in internal control such that there is a reasonable possibility that a material misstatement of the entity's financial statements will not be prevented or detected and corrected on a timely basis. For the rest of the presentation, I will note the material weaknesses that were identified during these two audits. There are two audit opinions issued. We have a qualified opinion on Community Services Block Grant, the Children's Health Insurance Program, the HIV Care Formula Grants, Medical Assistance Program, and HIV Prevention. All other major federal programs had an unmodified opinion. And here is a summary of the basis for the qualified opinion. For the Community Service Block Grant, it was qualified based on the eligibility requirements. For a Children's Health Insurance Program, the opinion was qualified based on cash management and subrecipient monitoring. And I will get into more details in these as we go through the presentation. For the HIV Care Formula Grants, it was qualified based on cash management, eligibility, period of performance, reporting, and subrecipient monitoring requirements. For the Medical Assistance Program, it is given a qualified opinion based on the cash management, eligibility, period of performance, procurement and suspension, and department, reporting, and subrecipient monitoring requirements. And for HIV prevention activities, cash management, procurement and suspension, department, reporting, and subrecipient monitoring. For the financial statements, and these are the findings based on material weaknesses from the CAFR, we have 6. Grant accounting, and the reason for that material weakness is the decentralized managing and tracking of grant revenues, receivables, and expenditures contributes to inaccurate balances, and that will be expanded on as we go through the report. Financial reporting, we noted that the current financial system, City Dynamics, makes it difficult to properly track property tax receivables, water billings, capital assets, and certain internal fund balances. A lot of this has to do with combining multiple different systems. We also had the material weakness for financial reporting due to manual posting, post-closing reviews of those balances and related activity. And what we find is that a lot of significant adjusting entries are made at the year end, and those are to correct things that happen throughout the year. But based on how the system is tracking and recording, that they can lead to both material and immaterial undiscovered errors. We have a material weakness on payroll and timekeeping. The current timekeeping system does not ensure proper approval and storage of timekeeping information. And the timekeeping system used by some departments does not have the capability to maintain records to support time charged to programs or grants as required by the federal programs. We have a material weakness on water and waste billing, and the city implemented UMAX. And during the transition, a number of customer accounts were not billed or billed inconsistently. This has resurfaced a number of times, and we identified it as a material weakness. For fixed asset accounting, we noted that the way that fixed assets are tracked, that depreciation is a manual calculation, and we found errors in that calculation. And we also noted that the identification of fixed asset additions is a manual process, and that the city has to go through a complicated process to identify those. We also noted that manual reconciliations involved in the process required an adjustment to depreciation expense for the fiscal year ended 2019. We also have a material weakness on information technology. This was due to the ransomware attack, which took out the city systems, and a lot of city systems came to a halt, and secondary systems had to be put into place. We also have a material weakness over the CFO, which is the Schedule of Expenditures and Federal Reward Reporting. This is the basis of the single audit report, and we noted that the accounting for grants is done by at least two different groups, the agency and Department of Finance. And the Department of Finance prepares the CFA. And when we were reconciling and tying it back to the different tracking mechanisms and tracking systems that the agencies had, we noted that there were a lot of differences, and that this led us to not have confidence in the completeness of federal expenditures and subrecipient payments for all the grants. We also noted that there's no centralized grant accounting function, and that since each agency is maintaining their own grant information, and the communication between those agencies and the Department of Finance is not sufficient enough to control and guarantee accurate balances, that led to the material weakness over the CFA. And then the third bullet point is identifying that this also affects the audit. The audit is based on identifying major programs, and without an accurate CFA, the audit scope that is required by the federal agencies and the federal government may not be accurate. Now I'm going to go over some material weaknesses for specific grants. We noted a material weakness over loans and loan guarantees. This affected the grants, the Home Investment Partnership, and the capitalization grants for drinking water state revolving funds. We noted that the city is not tracking loans associated with the grants, and we are required that when the government gives us a loan, that we identify that in the CFA or the related notes and any related expenses. We noted a material weakness over procurement and suspension and debarment. One of the requirements to receive federal funds is that we verify that all vendors used and paid from that grant are not on the federal debarred suspended list. and we could not verify or see where the different agencies validated that the vendors used were not on the list. We also noted that there is not an established process for that to occur. We noted a material weakness over activities allowed or unallowed and allowable. This is one of the core principles for federal funding, which basically says that when we request a reimbursement, that the expense we're getting reimbursed is allowed under the specific grant. And we noted that a large amount of the reimbursements are for payroll expenses, and in testing for payroll, we were not able to track and trace a number of the reimbursed expenses to verify that they were based on actual work from the grant, and also to verify the existence and approval of those expenditures. And the affected grants there were the Community Services Block Grant, Children's Health Insurance Program, and the HIV Prevention Activities Health Department. We noted a material weakness over eligibility. Eligibility is that the participants of the grant are eligible. We noted that recording retention of supporting documentation was not meeting the requirements by the specific grants. Those grants are the Community Service Block Grant, the HIV Care Formula, and the Medical Assistance Program. And then we also noticed that when we did find, and we did look at supporting documentation for eligibility participants, that we could not find that all of the participants met all of the eligible requirements. We have a material weakness over subrecipient monitoring. The requirement is that when an organization, a government agency receives federal funds, that if we have a subrecipient of those funds that pass through us, that the city has an obligation to make sure that that subrecipient is also compliant with all the federal rules. We noted that we could not find evidence of any subrecipient monitoring. The affected grants are the Children's Health Insurance Program, HIV Care Formula Grants, Medical Assistance Program, and HIV Prevention Activities Health Department. And so we were not, and management was not able to demonstrate to us whether the subrecipients were in compliance with the federal requirements. We have a material weakness over cash management. This is basic. The affected grants are Children's Health Insurance Program, HIV Care Formula Grants, Medical Assistance Program, HIV Prevention Activities Health Department based, and Maternal and Child Health Services Block Grants to the states. This is due to the difference in monitoring cash by the agency and Department of Finance, and that we found that finance and agency use different parameters for running the reports and that they don't reconcile with each other. So when we were trying to validate the cash receipts and the drawdowns, we were having challenges between the records from the agency and Department of Finance. We have a material weakness over period of performance. So this is twofold. One, period of performance is the grant has a period which we are allowed to use the funds by the grant. And then also at a CFA level, we are reporting on fiscal year ended June 30th, 2019. And so we were also checking that the expenses included in that CFA were actually incurred during that fiscal year. And we found that there were expenses incurred outside the allowable period of performance. And we also found that we didn't have strong controls or any controls to prevent costs incurred outside of the period of performance from being charged to grants. And when, we also noted that there was no supporting documentation provided to confirm that a beneficiary was eligible at the date of service for the BCHD. And those affected grants are HIV Care Formula Grants and Medical Assistance Program. We have a material weakness over reporting. For the Department of Health, the way that they invoice the state is through Form 440. And what we did is we went to validate that invoices from 440 to the expenditures incurred in the general ledger system. And we were not able to agree those two systems. And the Form 40, if it is generated from the city dynamics, there's not an audit trail that lets you trace it back to it. And so the city could not support the annual report Form 40 as required. And that is also based on differences between the agency and Department of Finance for running those reports and lack of reconciliation. The affected grants there were the HIV Care Formula Grants, Medical Assistance Program, HIV Prevention Activities Health Department Based, and Maternal and Child Health Services Block Grants at states. We noted a material weakness over wage rate requirements. Some grants have special requirements in their compliance, and this was one of them, and this was for Department of Transportation. And so we were unable to verify that the certified payroll was checked and signed by DOT personnel for accuracy to validate that those wages that were submitted as reimbursement, that there were proper controls over them, and that those amounts were accurate, and that the rates being paid by the contractors were correct. And the affected grant was a highway planning and construction federal aid highway program. Now, I do want to note that the city, Department of Finance, and BSED are putting significant efforts to replace many of the current city financial systems with Workday. And they, a lot of those are to address the issues noted here. The Department of Audits has requested and is attending many of the Workday meetings to assess if the issues that we have identified are being considered, and if not, to bring them up and remind them so that they can be considered in the implementation of the Workday system. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions from members of the board? Thank you. The audit report has been noted. As there's no more business before the board, we will recess until bid opening at 12 noon. We will reconvene May 13, 2020. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Please stay in and stay safe.
Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon. The Board of Estimates is now in session for the receiving and opening of bids. In accordance with the directives of the mayor and governor prohibiting gatherings of more than 10 people, and as part of the overall effort to limit submission of the COVID-19 virus, the Board of Estimates is conducting bid openings remotely. Members of the public can call in to listen to bid openings live by calling 443-984-1696 and entering access code 0817325. Board of Estimates meetings are also broadcast live on Charm TV Channel 25 on Comcast Cable in Baltimore City. Meetings are also streamed on the internet at www.charmtvbaltimore.com/watch-live. The Board of Estimates will continue to conduct bid openings remotely while the state of emergency declared by the Mayor of Baltimore and the Governor of Maryland remains in effect. Today, I have two addenda to note. Department of Public Works, SC 954, rehabilitation of primary settling tanks 3 and 4. Please change the bid due date from May the 6th, 2020 to May 13th, 2020. Also, the Bureau of Procurement, B50005883, drawbridge maintenance and operation. Please change the bid due date from May 6, 2020 to May 7th, 2020. Thank you.
Okay, just one correction. The new date for the second one is May 27th?
May.
All right, there's a typo.
Okay.
So the addendum are noted for the record.
Okay, so please note that the Bureau of Procurement,
right,
the bid change, please change the bid due date from May the 6th, 2020 to May
27th,
2020. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All noted.
The first bid is Department of Public Works, SC 949R, Stony Run wastewater pumping station upgrades with a bid bond. The bidder is Kiewit Infrastructure Company with a bid bond. What page is the total bid? Page 8. $2,816,050. That's $2,816,050. The next bidder is CPP Construction Company, Inc. With a bid bond. Total dollar amount is $2,727,000. $2,727,000. The next bidder is WM Slosher Company, Inc. with a bid bond. Total dollar amount, $3,433,000. $3,433,000.
Okay, these will be referred to Department of Public Works for their review.
The next item is Bureau of Procurement B50005955, Group Violence Intervention Service Response Providers. No bids were received.
So procurement will be advised.
The next bid is Bureau of Procurement B50006025, backhoe loaders with a bid bond. Is it?
Yeah, they have it.
Okay, with a bid bond. The bidder is Jesco Inc. Total dollar amount, $1,067,604.30. $1,067,604.30. The next bidder is that GT or CT?
GT.
GT Mid-Atlantic LLC.
With a bid bond.
With a bid bond. Total dollar amount, $1,187,952. That's $1,187,952. The next bidder is Valley Supply and Equipment Company, Inc. with a check. Total dollar amount, $1,095,540. $1,095,540.
Okay, these will be referred to the Bureau of Procurement for their review.
The next item is Bureau of Procurement, B50005835, City of Baltimore and HABC Disparity Study Price portion. No bid bond required. The first company is Griffin and Strong, PC. Total bid amount, $571,750. $571,750. The next company is MGT Consulting Group. Total bid amount is $665,135. $665,135. The next one is Mason Tillman Associates Limited. Total dollar amount, $774,660. $774,660. The next one is Miller Third Consulting, Inc. Total dollar amount, $614,625. $614,600, is that 625? Is that 8 or 6? 6. Wait, okay, one is for,
The Housing Authority?
read them separately.
Yeah. Well, no, this is for Housing Authority of Baltimore County.
Right. This is for Housing Authority Baltimore County.
Maybe they got them mixed up.
May I
Or
s-
no, there are two. There's two. Because there's,
Well, as I understand it, there were, at first it was combined. There was one, and then they were separated for City of Baltimore and then HABC. I believe that's the case.
Okay, so they have Baltimore County, but they mean city here, so we need to.
May I see what,
Baltimore County instead of city. Yeah.
But we'll still read it.
is there, well, I guess we could go ahead and read it, and I would actually ask the law department for an opinion.
Okay.
I don't know why they would say county.
Probably a typo. We can share this because we only have one.
Yeah, okay, so that last one is just for,
Let me start over. So,
okay, sorry.
okay, so Miller Third Consulting, Inc., price proposal for the City of Baltimore is $614,625.
Okay.
That's $614,625.
Okay. And why don't we just, all right, we'll just refer them all to procurement.
I didn't read this one.
Oh, there's another one. Oh,
Okay, and then Miller Third Consulting, Inc., price proposal. It reads Housing Authority of Baltimore County. Maybe it was a mistake, it should be city. That dollar amount is $380,575. $380,575.
okay. Okay, got it. All right, these will be referred to the Bureau of Procurement for their review. And I noted one was for the city, the other was for HABC.
Right.
Okay.
That's correct. There being no more business before this board, we are now in adjournment.